There we go. Y'all. I wanna yell let's go, but I know my mic is just gonna die if I just say let's go. You know, it's fine. It's clipping like crazy. We can fix it in post. We can always fix it in post. But
yeah,
let's freaking go, man. What?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
if you're
man.
just joining us and you don't know why we're excited,
oh my god.
Just Google the British Grand Prix 2024.
Dude. And you literally just finished the race. You just finished watching it just a couple minutes ago.
Yeah, I think Lauren's still watching. I think she's still watching the like post ceremony thing.
Dude, I stayed for all of it, man. Like, yeah, I watched it all.
Yeah, I hopped on because I knew we needed to get recording.
Oh my god, let's go.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to F1 or F
yes,
Off, your audio
welcome.
pit stop for F1 news, interviews, and race reviews. I'm your host, Gabe.
and I'm Idris, Lewis Hamilton stan.
Yes, resident Lewis Hamilton stan.
Yo,
yeah. So I got done watching the British Grand Prix. Idris, you watched it. I'm assuming
I watched it live
a bit earlier.
I watched it live, baby.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an amazing race! What an amazing result. Well earned, well deserved, and kind of I know it's cliche to say it's a masterclass, but like it was just kind of like a great example of watching different pit strategies play out in different mixed conditions. Like, I mean, we had rain happening, we had rain with a drying track, we had like a little bit of drizzle on some part of the track where like it was bone dry on the other. We had like a brief period of like really intense downpour and like the sun immediately coming out and like drying track up. Like, I mean, it was everything. It was everything all at once.
And I have, like, we're going to talk about it, but absolutely that is one of the big points I wanted to bring up, that this was such a diverse race. It had everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
You had someone different winning, right? It had like a return of someone beloved within the sport, right, by its fan base.
Record breaking,
right? Happened at Silverstone, which, like, I'll go on record saying it. Silverstone produces some of the best races.
It really does.
Like,
it really
consistently.
Does. Yeah.
That is always a race on the calendar that you're like, oh, awesome, right? Because that's where Carlos Sainz got his first race win, right? 2 seasons ago. And here we are again after a Silverstone race. The rain, like the slicks to intermediate, back to slick strategies. Oh my goodness. It just.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Okay, so let's just like squash this right now, right?
Yeah.
People were like complaining that the season's been boring. No, this by far has been one of the most exciting seasons in recent Formula One history, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would say, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, Gabe.
Yeah.
But 2024 has been excellent because we've seen a diversity of drivers winning. We're seeing constructors at the top who are battling, who haven't been there in a while, right? You're seeing McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes really fighting at the top, right? 2023 was really fun to see too, just because it was Max and Red Bull dominance, but it was like sheer dominance. You know what I mean? Like, we haven't seen something like that in a long time and probably won't for a while, right?
Right.
The season before that, it was kind of like, let's see Max kind of go back to back. And 21 was, the epic battle between Lewis and Max. So I feel like every season has kind of been like kind of marked by something really cool and something very unique about that season. I think this season, it's all about diversity and just like, we are seeing people show up just really coming into their element, right? Like, for years, people have been like, oh, I want to see Lando Norris at the top and Charles Leclerc fighting for wins. One of them is doing that, right? So it's nice to see Lando doing that, right? Of course, look, Charles got his Monaco win, but like, the season's great so far, man.
Yeah, it's a season of redemption, revenge, and seat swaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is what it seems to be because yeah, like Leclerc winning at Monaco, Norris getting his first win, first two wins actually,
Hmm.
and just like weird things happening with Red Bull and freaking Haas, like Nico
Bro.
Hulkenberg having one of the best seasons of probably his entire career,
Yeah.
which is remarkable. I don't know if that has anything to do with Gunther Steiner leaving, but I'm kind of honestly, and this might be controversial, I'm kind of glad he's not there now
Hmm.
because he was not really a person that I found very endearing.
Yeah.
Um, like he wore out his welcome pretty quick in my mind, and so I wonder if this sort of like new Haas, being a sort of you know, uh, a little more head to the grind, nose to the grindstone kind of, situation or sort of, you know, uh, team mentality has really been helping a lot with Haas.
Yeah.
Like it's less about media attention,
Yeah.
less about that sort of stuff, and more about actually executing strategy and making sure that the car is where it needs to be.
Yeah.
So. Um, but yeah, no, it has been an incredible season. I mean, the last season I can think of that was memorable in a sense of like a lot of diverse winners was actually 12 years ago in 2012.
Mm. Oh man.
'Cause that had like the first six races I think were different or
Yeah.
with different teams and different drivers. So like it was a pretty
Yeah.
remarkable thing to watch. So yeah, we're getting a little bit of that this year. And yeah, I'm all for it. This has
Hmm.
been fantastic. So
And I was gonna say, if anyone's looking for a really fun season to watch, 2012 is the one to watch because that is a season where Alonso should have won it, right?
hmm
And spoiler alert, he didn't. You know, so
yeah.
watch it just to see like how that all went down because man, like you'll see why people consider Alonso like one of the greats of the sport
hmm
and why on the other side of the screen here we have our resident Fernando Alonso stan, Mr.
hmm
Gabe Fisher himself. So
Right.
soundboard of round of applause clap.
Little claps. Um, yeah, well, it's like I have my reasons. I know that Alonso is a polarizing figure, and I get it. But the thing is, for me, is that like the one thing I feel like you can say about Fernando is that, like he knows what he's about, and he knows what he wants,
Oh
and
yeah.
he knows what he can do. He's not like a Lance Stroll, if you will, who just thinks he's the hot shit and just can't do anything. I know he finished above Alonso at the race today, but like he was right there. Like, the amount of times that Alonso has finished like 9 places ahead of Lance Stroll is innumerable. So, but yeah, it was a great day for the previous generation of racers in the F1 sport, and a return to something that you didn't think you would miss, but you do,
Oh, you
and you
miss it.
did, and I
Yeah.
definitely missed seeing this kind of result. So
Did you miss hearing that the British national anthem followed with the German anthem immediately afterwards?
yeah, it's like that. Ooh,
Yeah, it's like, oh,
it's like
nostalgia.
it's like that's taking me back. Well, yeah, but anyway, I mean, I think we knew that this was going to be a an interesting race, even from the practice
Oh yeah,
sessions. I mean,
absolutely.
Norris was the fastest, I think, in the first two.
Hmm.
Even Lance Stroll was like second fastest, I think, in FP1, which was weird. But
Which is weird.
but yeah, like it all sort of was setting up to be a really interesting weekend, and including qualifying, which we had a very, very, very unique result in qualifying, which is also record breaking, and that was the first time at Silverstone that they had 3 British drivers as one, two, and three.
Hmm.
So that's pretty special. They're also, I think, the 3 British drivers on the circuit right now. There isn't any other. Am I missing any other British drivers in
No,
the lineup? I think
no.
it's just them, right?
Yeah, just those three.
Which was amazing. First time we've had a Mercedes lockout in
It's been a minute.
been a minute.
Yeah,
And
since 21, I think.
George Russell getting his pole. fantastic. Yeah, it was like just such an amazing, unique qualifying result.
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely made you think that this is definitely like a British sport in the sense of there's a lot of media bias towards the British drivers, and you hear it all the time in the broadcast, right? Like
Sure.
even Crofty was like, you know, pardon us for our British bias, but we're really excited because it's a British guy, like and
Yeah.
it just made me
Sure.
think about how over the weekend, Max was, spitting some hot takes. He had some hot fajitas he wanted to get off his chest about
Mm,
how there's a lot of British bias, right, in the world of Formula One because of a lot of the English publications, all that kind of stuff. Just because he's been getting like a lot of crap about the incident he had with Lando at the last race in Austria.
right.
So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, it was definitely you're in the I was gonna say the UK. I was gonna say the Great Britain, and then my mom was like, no, say UK. You're in the UK when you're surrounded by British fans and you have a British winner and then the place is going nuts. There's always something very special to see when like the hometown kid or the hometown favorite wins at the
Right.
hometown. It's just nothing's like it, right?
Right. Well, and it's kind of rich hearing Max talk about a British bias. It's like whose fans show up to every race with like giant orange flares that like spew out all over the track and cause a hazard? I mean, like whose fans like just like really intensely come after anybody that criticizes their driver in that way? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of Lewis Hamilton fans that do the same, but like I don't know, man. I mean, Max gets just as much bias, and if also, I mean, if we can be controversial and talk about preferential treatment,
Mm.
a la 2021, cough, cough. Um, but here's the thing: the majority of race teams, okay, are based in the UK. I
Hmm.
mean, even if they're like not, for like Alpine's not in France, right? Like they're in Enstone. They're the Enstone based team.
Hmm.
Mercedes, their headquarters is in England. Williams, McLaren, who else?
Red Bull
I think yeah, Red Bull. I mean, I think even I don't know. No, Sauber is I still think in
in Switzerland, right? Yeah.
Switzerland. Obviously, Ferrari is in Maranello, but and I think isn't Haas actually like just across the street from Silverstone?
Yeah, I believe
Like they're
Haas.
based, they're
Yeah, they have
UK
a satellite
based.
office in UK.
So like this is the home race for a lot of teams,
Hmm.
like physically. So saying that there's a British bias, it's like, it would be like saying that Americans have a bias towards American football. I mean, like, yeah,
Hmm.
because that's where it's at.
Hmm.
And also too, I mean, historically, English teams and English drivers have, for the most part, dominated the majority of the sport overall.
Hmm.
Between
Hmm.
Williams championships, McLaren's championships, Mercedes championships, even though, Mercedes is a German manufacturer,
Sure.
they're based in England.
Hmm.
And pretty much most of their staff is English. Their main driver was English. Think of like
Lotus.
how many, yeah, Lotus. Think of how many English championships there are. Let me Sir Jackie Stewart, Graham Hill, Jim Clark,
Damon
Nigel
Hill.
Mansell, Damon Hill, Lewis Hamilton, Jensen Button. I mean, they're all British drivers. Like the English just do this sport very, very well, and so I mean, hey, like
Yeah.
it's just what it is, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, let's talk about McLaren a little bit here. Give them a little bit of the spotlight
Woo.
because yeah, they're cast your mind back to 20
It was 20. It
uh
was 22. It was
2016,
oh 20.
2015.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah. Ooh. The
like
Makanda days, right?
the return of Honda to McLaren with Fernando Alonso, who like immediately crashed into the wall during the preseason testing and had like an injury, and like just the wallowing in the back, the GP3 engine, like I mean, just think about that. Like at that point in time, did you ever think that McLaren was going to ever recover?
Oh my god.
Like
So
it was, there was so much doubt. Like you just thought, like,
yeah,
oh well, is McLaren done? Like, is it? Are they a team?
yeah, that's a good point.
Here we
That's a good
are.
point. And here, yeah, and look at how they're doing now, man. Like,
Here we are.
and like even more recent. Okay, so for those that weren't watching 2016, right? That was a season that I think Jenson Button and Fernando were racing together, driving together, and I think they brought on Stoffel Van Dorn the year after. So that
Stoffel
was a
Van Dorn, yeah.
very weird, tumultuous time at McLaren. But for those who've been watching more recently, think back to 2022 preseason testing, right? So this is when they've just introduced the new regs, right? And McLaren shows up, and what was it like P17, P18 for Piastri
Their
and
car was
Norris?
just covered in
Yes.
sponsorships. It looked
Yeah.
terrible.
And then also, do you remember they had to like duct tape on like their like the side view mirror during preseason testing? And on top of that, right, this was after Piastri like sent out that tweet saying that he had no contract on the
Right.
books with Alpine.
With
And
Alpine,
so
yeah.
he joins McLaren, and then they like we see the first race results, and we're all like, "Ooh, buddy, I don't know if you wanted to make that move, right? Look where they are
Well,
now."
you know, one of the smartest contract moves to think like in history as of like right now, like it just that was one of the smartest moves
Yeah.
Piastri could have made. At the time, it was like okay, are you sure? But you know, my favorite thing in that era was remember I think it was maybe was it before Silverstone or maybe it was before the season started. Remember they McLaren submitted where they were going to make changes on the car, and it was basically like the whole thing. It was just like one big circle, like. I mean, for real, like they have. I mean, talk about a glow up. They have
Big time.
They have returned back to form in a very serious way.
Yeah.
But I mean, also too, we're now seeing a little bit of that with Mercedes.
Dude.
And
Yes.
and I you know, and aside from Mercedes too, like if it can happen for McLaren and it can happen for Mercedes, it can happen for Williams. You know what I mean?
This is what I'm saying. Oh my God.
Yeah.
How awesome would it be to see that shiny blue car with Alex Albon, top of the grid spot there, top of the podium. Oh,
That would be incredible. And also, too, if you consider the fact that, and I know people are saying around this is a joke, but this is a serious thing to say. Logan Sargent has out-qualified Sergio Perez, like, out of 7 out of the last 12 races.
dude.
I mean, like,
I know.
that is, yeah,
And
that's,
and here's another
that's a
fun-
result.
Here's another fun Checo stat.
Mhm.
Nico Hulkenberg has outscored Checo, I think 6 points on the last few Grand Prix.
Yeah. I
Like,
mean, and so it's funny. Like now, the rumors are going around saying like, "Oh, you know, we re-signed Perez, but no,
well,
that ain't
have you?
that ink ain't even dry yet." And I'm sure they're already like
Oh.
thinking about the out.
So actually, all right, let's pull up the news segment a little earlier, right? Because we'll talk about the race because there's a lot to talk about there. But
Right.
something really interesting that like some information has been coming out the last few days, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the new contract that Checo has signed, right, actually has several clauses written into it based on his performance. So
Oh,
he
yeah,
has
okay.
to be within a certain point, like delta, from Max to be considered to stay, right? And it has to be hit within a certain number of races, right? Because he is actively costing them the constructors championship right now.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah.
I like mark my words right here. I'm saying it July 7th, 2024, after Silverstone Grand Prix, right? I do not think Checo will be on the team next year unless
No.
like a miracle happens. There's no way, right?
Yeah.
There's
no,
absolutely no
he
way.
would. Yeah, he would have to win like the next 4 races or something. I think to really
Yeah, to
prove
catch
his
up.
medal at this point. But then that puts the team in a weird place too, because apparently the rumor mills going around is that Williams is courting because they're not getting a solid response from Carlos Sainz. There's apparently rumors going around that they're now courting Danny Ricciardo to possibly move to Williams with Albon. But if Perez can't produce, you know, if Ricardo hasn't signed that, if he hasn't signed that contract, then he could potentially go into the Red Bull in that second seat. However, here's the thing: I can understand the idea of that, but honestly, I mean, for me, it's just like, why don't you put Yuki in there?
Thank you.
You know what I mean? Just put
Thank you.
Yuki. He's put in enough of his solid performances. He is consistent. He
Yep.
has been with that team. He's been loyal with that team for a really long time. And like, if you want to keep him in your wheelhouse, just put him in the Red Bull seat. Just swap him or something. You know, put Perez in the RB. You know, in the V carb or something like,
Hmm.
or just maybe it's just time to cut Perez loose, and maybe Perez needs to try and find his way. You know, maybe Perez takes the Williams seat. Maybe Perez
Hmm.
tries to get a seat with Sauber next to Hulkenberg. I don't know. You know, this is
Here's
also, I think, why we need another F1 team on the grid.
Yes, I second that strongly. Here's the thing about Ricardo. Ricardo is Horner's man, right? I
Mm,
don't think he's Marco's guy. I don't think Marco really cares too much for him. I mean, he probably like likes him. He's like, oh, he's a fine guy, but no, I don't want
mm,
him in that second seat, right?
yeah.
Why? I don't know why there's so much of a push to put Ricardo there. Like, don't get me wrong, I like Ricardo. I think like he seems like a great guy, great personality. I think
Mm,
he's great for the sport as far as like bringing in like eyes and attention, right? He's very relatable, he's funny, charming, all that kind of stuff, right? Um, but like what about like Liam Lawson? This guy's like rotting away, you know?
hmm.
Liam Lawson
Yeah.
deserves a seat. He deserves a shot. So
Yeah.
maybe yeah, bump Yuki up to like the main Red Bull team. Bring Liam Lawson in, and I don't know. I'm sorry. I think Danny Ricciardo hasn't shown that he's not outperforming Yuki at
Right.
all.
Well, I think the idea is that I think because Danny Ricciardo has won races for Red Bull in the past, and because after he was put in the Red Bull at Silverstone last year to do that demo run, right? Was
Hmm.
it last year or was it the year before?
Yeah, I think it was
Remember
last
he
year. Yeah,
yeah,
he's still
he
got it.
got in, yeah, he got into that Red Bull car and he like matched Max's pole time or something. And like, okay, so I think what might be happening here is that the Red Bull specifically plays to Ricardo's strengths.
Sure, sure.
Like the McLaren didn't, right? And the
Right.
V carb doesn't really,
Hmm.
but maybe there's something about the Red Bull, the way that it's built, that Danny is just, that works for him, you
Hmm.
know? And that's why, there's a potential for that. This is, it's also part of me wishes that like teams would like be authorized. Like imagine if during a practice session at the next race, right? They put Yuki in the car during a practice session, and they put Danny Ricciardo in the car during a practice session, and then
Mm.
just like whoever has the fastest time in that practice session gets the seat, for the next race or something. Like I feel like there should be some way to test and compare in that
Hmm.
way. I mean, I don't
Yep.
know, but yeah, I
Yes.
mean that's the thing. I think it's because of Ricardo's history. But the thing is at some point you got to take a risk, and I think Yuki
Yeah.
is a risk, but it's not a unreasonable risk. I
Yeah.
mean,
Right. Right.
I don't know.
It seems like a safe gamble, right? Like
Yeah.
because at worst, Yuki is gonna get points. I think Yuki would probably. This is not to like shade Checo or anything, but I think Yuki would perform better. Frankly,
Hmm.
right? Yuki has in sports and athletics, right? People always talk about like your skill ceiling, right? Like, if you're like starting off a sport when if you start playing a sport when you're 5, right, versus playing a sport just start playing a sport when you're 15 or 18, right?
Hmm.
When you start playing at 5, by the time you're 18, you have 13 years of experience,
Right.
right? When
Right.
you're 15, right, and you get to 18, you have 3 years of experience. There's a big difference between that, right? Sure,
Right.
your brain capacity and like your developmental ability is all different, right? But that's still 15 years of experience where you can build a natural innate like intuition and feel for how something should be, right? When you're playing
Hmm.
it, whether you're shooting a ball, driving a go-kart, whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
And Checo's on the higher end right now, right? Like it's not like he's going to like learn some new skills next year because
Hmm.
he's what 30, I think 34, 33, 34, something like that, right?
Yeah, he's around our age.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a little older than us, right?
Hmm.
And so like you got to think about like the longevity of this too, right?
Yeah.
So that's Checo's case, whereas Yuki I think is what 24, right? So
Yeah.
he's
He.
got
Yeah.
he's got like he's not even really in like his biological physical like prime, right? That's usually
Right.
around 27, 28 is what they say, right? So he's got time, you know what I mean? He's got time that he can build up towards things, and he's shown some really good results so far, right? Like give that guy a chance. Give him a chance.
Right.
Give Liam Lawson a chance, right? Because
Yeah.
you're just letting like talent rot away and wither on the vine here, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it reminds me though of when Pierre Gasly was at Toro Rosso, and he was doing really well at Toro Rosso, and they
Hmm.
pulled him into the Red Bull, and then he just fell on his
Withered,
face.
yeah,
So like, I think that I think the big problem is that the Red Bull, the RB, 19 or whatever it is now, the Red Bull car is a different animal to the V carb. Like they're just different. You know what I
hmm,
mean? They're not the same like vehicle. And so one of them is going to play to certain people's strengths. So I mean,
sure,
it is
sure,
possible that like the V carb it just plays into Yuki's strengths better than the Red Bull
and that's
could,
quite possible. Yeah.
and that maybe it's the opposite with Ricardo. But see,
Hmm.
that's where the gamble comes in. And I think that you don't really know. And it's like if you're going to be taking risk and just swapping drivers like willy nilly like you have the past
Hmm.
few years, you might as well do it with Yuki.
Just do it.
It's like
Yeah.
worst case scenario, you just put him back in the V carb and then maybe cut him loose and he goes somewhere else and
Right.
has a more enjoyable experience. Like this is what you have to. It's just how it has to go,
Yeah.
But I think that Yuki is an asset that they're just not paying
Right.
attention to
Yeah.
as much as they should be.
So you bring up something really interesting. Maybe just across the board, what needs to happen is that there needs to be like FIA sponsored factory teams or something that like
Hmm.
gives drivers like a chance at driving on the grid, right? Driving a Formula One car, right? But it's not like a big name. It's not a works team, right?
Hmm.
But you at least there's a spot. You know what I mean? And maybe there needs to be a thing of like, okay, the FIA will promise you it'll just be like a white label FIA car, right? The
Hmm.
FIA promises you get a season, in an F1 car, right? Just or something. Something has to happen. That's my alternative to there not being another team because clearly there's a need for it.
Yeah.
The infrastructure is there to support it physically, right? The garages all
Hmm.
have, they can fit up to what? I think 13, 14 teams,
Hmm.
most tracks, right? Like it's not like we can make it happen, right? It's literally a
Hmm.
problem of finances and profit and how that profit share, is broken
Yeah.
down. And I understand
Yeah.
that. I get it, right? Like
Hmm.
business business has to, the business stakeholders need to be satisfied. I get it. But like
Right.
from a viewership standpoint, kind of sucks because I would love to see like Liam Lawson out there, right? Because he's shown that
Hmm.
he can drive, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of other drivers who've shown that they can drive, right? Um, I mean, it's a good thing Ollie Behrman has a seat for next year, right? And
Yeah.
he'll
Oh
be sitting
yeah.
next to he'll be sitting next to Ocon, which is great because honestly, I think Ocon does have talent. Alpine is maybe just not the place that he needs to be, right? So,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, like so. What? Yeah. What is yeah, because Hulkenberg is going
to Sauber.
to Sauber,
Hmm.
right? And then Ali Beerman is
With
signing with
Haas.
Haas. Wait,
Yep.
you saying Ocon signed with Haas too?
Yes, Esteban
Are you
Ocon
kidding?
will be going to
Oh,
Haas next year. Yep.
wow.
I like it. I
Um,
actually like the lineup of Ocon Behrman. I think that gives Behrman a good baseline, that he can benchmark himself against. And I think
mm,
Ocon, that's probably going to be a good fit for him, right? Because it's going to be a smaller team, right? I think he's going to be able to make stronger decisions about how he wants things to be handled with this car, right? I think Alpine just the way Alpine Renault seem to run, it seems to be like hey, I'm the boss, you will do what I say, kind of that
mm,
that is the vibe they give, right? Versus,
mm,
hey, let's collaborate. Like, what do you think is a good idea? And that's one thing I've always really liked about Haas. That
mm.
I think that's why they've always kind of been able to punch above their weight because they really tend to collaborate a bit more versus like a more stovepipe vertical integration type
Yeah.
of approach of like you will do this and then that falls down.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. And Ali Beerman's going to learn what it's like to have a teammate that he hates, like right out the gate. So yeah, I think it's a win-win for everybody. Wow. Okay. Well, then that just still leaves the Alpine seat. Let's see. With this Alpine seat's open, the
yeah,
Williams seat is open.
right.
The second Sauber seat is
Second
open
Sauber
too.
seat is still open. Yeah. So
And I think
Joe,
that's it, right?
I,
No, they the
no,
Mercedes
no, no,
seat
no.
still isn't filled.
Mercedes seat and I think the Aston Martin seat technically. Like, oh wait, no, they
No, no.
confirmed it. They confirmed
Yeah,
it.
they
Yeah,
confirmed
they
Stroll
confirmed that it's
to
Lance.
surprise of nobody.
Yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, and really, I think, like I said the last episode, Carlos Sainz is still the diamond of the season because
yeah,
um, he has yet to really determine where he's going to go, and I think that the longer he takes, to try to figure it out, the less shine is on his
mm-hmm,
choice because everyone's going to be like, oh well, we got to sign somebody.
yeah.
and we got some options. So
And not only that, I think they will also be inclined to offer him. They would not be as inclined to offer him a lot of money or as much money. I think his
yeah,
value is dwindling as the time goes on, right?
it is.
Because
Mhm.
right now, I'm sure he sees that Mercedes just had this excellent performance, and he's probably thinking like, oh well, maybe let's talk with Mercedes again and see what they want to offer, right? And if I'm
Mhm.
Mercedes, right, I would feel kind of like I don't know. I wouldn't like that. That wouldn't rub me the right way. It'd make me feel like, oh, so now that you see something that looks good, even though that's what we've been
Mhm.
telling you we can do, right? Now you want
Right.
to talk to us, right?
Yeah.
And I understand that, right? Because Carlos has to hedge his bets. He has to make sure that he's in a safe, good position, right? But at the
Yeah.
same time, like, I don't know. If I were Mercedes, I wouldn't be like, yeah, I don't. I would feel less sure about him, you know?
Maybe we'll get a surprise retirement from Max, and then Science will just take that spot. Um, or maybe Red Bull will do the Red Bull thing and just sign Carlos rather than reach from within. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um, but let's talk about the race
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
because
Yes.
it was pretty incredible, and we definitely need to
Amazing.
get into it because there was some wild stuff that went down.
Yeah.
So, um, beginning of the race, right? Sunny conditions, dry track. Everybody's on their slick tires. Um, Lights go out. Russell gets a good go off the
Mm-hmm.
line. Hamilton sticks nicely behind
Mm-hmm.
him. Norris tries to jockey for the second position, but he basically runs towards the outside, leaves a nice gap for Max to come in on the inside and take that third place away. And there it gets set, right?
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of carnage towards the back. I think the Williams got hit, and but like no major retirements or anything, at least at that point. And at that point, we kind of settled into this interesting thing where it was just like, okay, everybody was telling their drivers, okay, it's going to be, lap 16 is it's going to start raining, or like
Mm-hmm.
somebody else said, oh, it's going to be in 6 laps, and they're like, conflicting reports about when this rain was going to show up, but everybody knew that it was coming. And there's all this speculation, oh, it's going to be a small cell, and then it's going to dry out, and then it's going to be a longer one, and it's
Yep.
going to go on for however many laps. And so all that calculation, like that's where it really starts to come into your head. And it was really like, who's going to pit first? Who's going to take the risk taking those inters early?
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen? And I think to everybody's surprise, that first little wave of rain, nobody pitted except for like a few. Like I think like Leclerc was pitted, Zhou Guanyu and Perez all switched to the inters, like just
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't know and they wanted to try something, and it
Yeah.
just failed
Mm-hmm.
because the rain wasn't enough that um that to deter teams from removing slicks. And Hamilton shot like right up the top of the order because that guy is a rain master.
Mm-hmm.
um and yeah, like just watching that strategy sort of work its way out. And like Silverstone's a big track, it's a really big place. It's kind of like how with Spa, it will be raining at one portion of the track and then be
Right.
sunny and dry at the other. It's a little bit of that, right? Because it's like 6 kilometers long. Um, and so we had that situation where it was like raining at the mid half of the track, but everything else was either really dry or sort of in between. And yeah, we saw a lot of switching of positions, lots of close racing. Thankfully, everybody kind of kept their noses clean. I think
Mm-hmm.
Max particularly was not trying to put on too much of a show and play the long game,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I think he was 100% at fault with the clash with Norris in Austria. Especially once you saw that on board, it was pretty obvious. And
Mm-hmm.
so maybe this time around he was just like, well, okay, like I have to try and you know, take a step back and just try and
Keep it
salvage what
clean.
I can, keep it clean. I,
Mm-hmm.
I I will give Max kudos for doing that because
Mm-hmm.
like clearly he didn't try pushing Norris. He stepped out of the way, and then Norris repaid that favor later on too, where Max is coming. He didn't try and push for that position. He just moved right out of the way. He's just like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to compromise a podium here. So,
Yep.
um, but yeah, so what were you thinking as soon as that rain forecast was sort of coming in? Like, did you think was there anybody that you thought was going to come in early? Were you saying like, oh man, like they need to come in now or whatever?
Um,
Because yeah,
yeah, good question. So it wasn't one of the thoughts that flew by. The thought I had that I was a little that showed concern, right? Because I was surprised to see that Mercedes wanted to double stack, right? And pit
right.
Hamilton and Russell at the same time. And I was like, ooh, all right, we'll see how this goes because
Hmm.
like a double stack can really blow up in your face if you don't get it just right. And
Hmm.
luckily Mercedes were able to pull that off. So I was really happy to see that because that was kind of like a return to their old form of them just kind of being on top of it, right? And being
Hmm.
sharp.
Yeah.
So that was great to see. That was gutsy. That was really gutsy. Um, yeah, as soon as it started raining and I saw Norris on, I think Norris was he on the mediums when he on his first slick stint? I think he was on mediums, right? And he's tearing through and then he passes Russell, then he passes Norris and then Piastri. It's like a Mercedes sandwich, right? You got McLaren as the
Right.
buns, right? And yeah, it was amazing to see how like how much more responsive the McLaren was in that like kind of intermediate, ra- not the tire, intermediate rain range, right? Where it was like
Hmm.
a little
Right.
wet, not wet enough to put the inters on, right? But yeah, they were doing a great job, and I was really happy to see that. So really, just again, shout out and kudos to the McLaren technical team for like putting this together because like the way this car seems to have just come alive over the last few
Hmm.
races. Yeah, I think they are really, I think McLaren has always kind of been known for having like one of the best chassis on the grid, right?
Yeah.
And I think this race is kind of the last few races in particular have shown that they have a really good and deep understanding of the complexities of building a chassis and making sure that it's responsive enough for their drivers, right?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, excellent. I was really happy to see that. Um, yeah, some people were doing some interesting tire things. As soon as I saw Perez on the intermediates, like I was just like, oh man, Red Bulls they've given up on him for this race. That
Hmm.
they're pretty much just using him for R&D for
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
Max at this point.
Right. No, right. And I mean, Max himself, like he was not able to, pull out the gaps that he normally does, at least until the
Mhm.
end.
Yeah.
Once it started drawing out again. But then, and then partway through that race, Russell, who was on pole, had a mechanical failure, which is
Hmm.
rare.
Oh,
And really
yeah.
crushing to happen at your home race. Because Russell very much could have, finished on the podium or possibly won that race.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, these are things you can't necessarily anticipate, and
Yeah.
it was probably making Hamilton a little sweaty, in the car, which I you can understand.
Hmm.
Oh, sorry. If your teammate, has a mechanical failure, you have to just kind of chug along and just try
Hmm.
and, make it happen. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so once that rain really started to hit, though,
Hmm.
I will say that Red Bull had their timing perfect for switching to inters because
So
they were like
perfect.
25 seconds behind.
Hmm.
And that rain came in and he pitted at the right time because he shot way all the way up to like fourth place,
Yes.
like right back in the game. They left Piastri out one lap
One
longer,
lap
and
too long. Yeah.
that kind of destroyed Piastri's race. But then Lewis Hamilton came in right at the right time as well. Like he jumped in, he was ahead of Norris, he was
Hmm.
ahead of Verstappen. He just right up to the top. That was the
Hmm.
perfect time for him.
And it
And
was.
so go for it.
I was gonna say, and it was great too to see McLaren like. I mean, what really helped Lewis in the long run was just McLaren bungled that pit stop. It took an
Hmm.
extra like 4 seconds there, right? And that
Yep.
or it was an extra 2 seconds, and
Right.
that was enough. That was enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just like several drivers at several different places had the perfect pit stop strategy, and then several other drivers in several other places had the worst. It was such a interesting a spread of that. Like you could just see how each of them worked and like who got it right, who didn't. Like this would be a race that would be perfect to study if you were a pit stop strategist,
Hmm.
you know? And you're like, okay, let's study rain, let's study rain conditions and like, when's the time to do it, when's not, like, what was happening. Like I bet you that they're going to analyze this race to death
Mm-hmm.
and be like, how did this happen and why, and
Right.
learn from it.
Yeah.
It's amazing,
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic example of that.
Yeah.
And I honestly think like this race is going to go down in history as one of the most incredible races
D-
in F1
Honestly,
history. I mean, like
absolutely.
because it not even. I mean, it was good
It
racing.
had
It
everything,
was
man.
close. Like there was a lot of good passes that were solid. That wasn't out of control. And it was just an amazing example of just strategy playing
Yeah.
itself out. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Um, so towards the end there, I think like 10 laps to go, I was getting real nervous
Oh, absolutely,
because
man. Absolutely, because
I
you're just yeah. Like, is it going to be a power unit failure? Is
mhm,
Max just going
I
to eat
was
eat up this gap? Oh my goodness.
yeah, I was staring at the gap between him and Norris, and Norris he kept it at like 2.4, 2.7,
Mm-hmm.
like for laps after lap after lap. I'm like, oh, Lewis just has to get to lap 50 and he'll be
Yeah.
fine. And Verstappen did a really weird thing, switch to hard tires, which
Mm-hmm.
people weren't expecting, but it was ultimately a good call.
Very good
Although I
call.
think he probably could have done better if it was on mediums, because they would have been a little longer. Like they would have lasted longer than the softs, but they
Mm-hmm.
would be a little faster than the hards.
Yeah.
But it was just whatever. That was just what they projected. Maybe Max was better on the hard tires anyway. But he managed to pass Norris, which Norris just kind of jumped out of the way. Like I said earlier,
Mm-hmm.
he was just like, well, he's not going to try and fight, and I think he wanted to be on the podium, so he wasn't going to risk getting a retirement.
Yep.
And yeah, Lewis Hamilton he had enough pace that he was able to hold off Max, and man, yeah, what a result that
Yeah.
was. I mean,
Yeah.
you could see the emotion on his
Oh
face,
yeah.
like just gloves, like helmet in hands, just breaking
Crying.
his voice broken up in the
Mm-hmm.
radio. Yeah,
Crying
amazing.
while like embracing his father, and like you can see like I'm a sucker for like parent child interactions like
Hmm.
in media, whether it's like a real scene, like a real like news media clip you're seeing, whether it's like a Disney movie, like
Hmm.
because you just know like that parent loves that kid so much, right?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
they were like wiping their butts, right? Changing their
right.
diapers, all this kind of stuff, and like you see them like embrace and be like, I care about you so much, and I'm so proud of you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Like it was just so moving to see. Um, but yeah, real quick, just want to give a shout out for like all these records that were just achieved, right? With
Yeah,
this
yeah.
race
Let's
win,
go
right?
down the list.
Yeah, because there's a
We
lot,
already
right?
mentioned one, right? So it was the three British drivers
Yes,
on the first three grid spots of the British
yes.
Grand Prix.
So that's for the event weekend itself, yeah. But
Right.
for Lewis's win, most wins at a single track. That's 9 at Silverstone.
Yep.
So it was previously 8, and I think he had 8 at Hungaroring actually, right?
Mhm.
And it was Vettel or not Vettel. I'm sorry. The other
Michael
German great,
Schumacher.
Michael Schumacher. Yes, also had 8. I think at oh my God, what's the name of the place? Can't remember, but I think it's a German track potentially.
Was it not Belgium? I thought he had maybe he had eight at Belgium.
It might
I know
be.
he's had a few. He's had a lot at a few tracks. He's
Hmm.
had a lot of success.
Yeah,
Ayrton Senna had 6 wins. Was that Monaco?
I think
I think.
Monaco. Yeah,
I think Graham Hill was on that list too,
yeah,
and Sebastian Vettel was on that list. But yeah,
yeah. It's a
he was
list of
tied with
greats.
he was tied with Schumacher for 8, and so
Yeah,
this makes 9, which
yeah,
makes most wins at a single
yeah.
track.
Most ones at a single track, and for it to be
Mhm.
his home Grand Prix, like come on.
Yeah, come on.
Oldest driver to win in the 21st century, right? At the age of
Wow.
39, right? First driver to win a Grand Prix after 300 race starts, right? That was kind of the thing. That
Mm,
was, that's kind of like the curse, right? That like, oh, once
right.
a driver gets past 300 Grand Prix starts, right? They just don't win
Mhm.
anymore, right? Lewis
Right.
Hamilton just broke that. And
Right.
150th podium for Mercedes. I'm pretty sure it's the podium, not like actual like wins.
Right.
I think it's the podiums. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this is
That's
just
incredible.
amazing. And like this is his last Grand Prix or last British Grand Prix with Mercedes, right? So,
Right.
for him to have been with this constructor for his entire career, right? Like not just team, but also like power unit too, right? When he was at McLaren. at the
Right.
start of his career. I mean, just amazing, and just I think you could see how emotional and powerful this was for not just him, not just his team, but like the fans, everyone there. Even the other drivers are just happy, right? Like you see
Right.
Russell come up and like dap him up after,
Mm-hmm.
tap his helmet. In the cool down room, there are some really great interactions between Max and Lewis. I think Max said to Lewis, he said, been a while. And then Lewis said, ball hogger, like it's like that playful kind
Mm-hmm.
of banter. It's just like, it was nice to see, you kind of like you
Yeah.
look, it's like you look back on the old days and like, just wipe a tear away as you think about the
Yeah.
nostalgia it brings you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for real. And I mean, honestly, like this, and we're going to say this too, this race was earned. This was not
Absolutely.
like Max made a mistake, some big accident, and somebody swooped in. Like, no, Hamilton
Right.
held that gap from Norris and Max for the 12 laps that counted.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And good for, man, good for him.
Yeah.
It's just like incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, bless you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Ooh.
Um, Yeah, it was really wonderful to see, and I second what you said there earlier that I think this is going, and this is like really not even me being like a Lewis Hamilton fan. Like yes, I really love like Lewis. Like I think he's a great driver, great human being, but like um this race had everything you would want as a racing fan, right?
Right.
So many lead changes, so many competing strategies. People like waiting for like the right time to pit, and you had sun, then rain, then sun, and then you had some wet tires, and it just it was so fun to watch. And you're
Mhm.
seeing people at the top of their element competing at the top, right? You had
Right.
Norris, who is like honestly like Norris is he is going to win again. And like I
Yeah.
said, I think he has a real strong shot at winning. I, I think there's a chance he can win the championship this year if he just continues to take it to Max, right? And keeps
Hmm.
Max honest.
Right.
But yeah, this was just so satisfying to see. One thing that was sad to see was that Ferrari just kind of bungled this race completely though.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
they
Yeah.
just completely Ferrari just Ferrari did again, right? Mamma
Yeah, they
mia
did.
Scuderia.
Right.
Um, and I would like to think that this is like their last like what do they call it? Oh, I okay, so I brought this up on a previous pod episode of what is it called when an athlete has like a superstition, right? They call it the yips, right? When they can't suddenly
Mm.
can't perform, right? So maybe this is
Hmm.
the last of the yips that they're getting out of themselves
Hmm.
to make sure that they're ready for Sir Lewis Hamilton's arrival next year, and maybe Adrian
Yeah.
Newey. We'll see. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, yeah. We'll see. Um, yeah. I think for me, the other big takeaway, the thing that was really amazing to hear is like literally you could hear the crowd roaring
Yeah.
that entire last lap, like the whole last lap. Like normally you maybe hear some crowd cheering,
Hmm.
but man, it was just a roar.
Hmm.
Everyone was so stoked. I think that no matter if you were a McLaren fan or what, and also too, I will say this. Remember how I said a while ago that I could imagine Lewis Hamilton finishing his F1 career with McLaren like he started, like coming in and
Hmm.
coming out, right? If McLaren stays on this trajectory of being like really successful and like competing at the top, maybe winning a championship with Norris, maybe Lewis and Norris has some close fights in the top or something. I can imagine in a couple of years Lewis Hamilton coming back to McLaren and finishing his career with a couple seasons with them if they were back up on top.
Hmm.
This is just speculation obviously, but like I couldn't imagine it before. He left McLaren right at the right time,
Hmm.
and joined the Mercedes at the right time. So I guess time will tell whether he's joining Ferrari at the right time,
Right.
or if maybe he should have considered going back to McLaren or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, no. In any case, great for those guys. Red Bull obviously has to get their shit together and figure out what they're doing because
Yeah.
yeah, Perez is not performing.
It's crazy, man.
Max can't carry that team by himself.
No.
He's really great, but this is not a thing where you can be like a Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
your other teammates have to pull their weight, and yeah, I guess time will tell what's going down. So
Yeah.
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 In other news, yeah, I haven't watched the in IndyCar news. I haven't watched the IndyCar race yet.
Same.
But
We'll
yeah,
post
the
our thoughts though
hybrid
about that.
we will. Yeah, the hybrid engines came in at Mid Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bummer we're not there, but next year is what my plan is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, these hybrid engines add 100 pounds on top of the car, but like 120 extra horsepower.
Woo!
So like, yeah,
Woo!
they're a lot quicker, but they're
Zippy.
a lot more to handle around the turns.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently there was like a bunch of penalties that happened from teams or
Yeah.
drivers like swapping unauthorized engine swaps.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't even seen who that is. So I'm curious. I'm gonna
Yeah.
watch it a little bit here, but
Yeah. You know, I'm thinking, Gabe, something that might be fun is if we drop for the listeners like a quick, like 10 minute, like, hey, here's what we thought about the IndyCar race this weekend. You know, this sometime this week. That might be fun to do
yeah,
for
let's do
y'all.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to keep up with the IndyCar content because I've been
Hmm.
watching a lot of it. I mean, I've been
Yeah.
watching. This is like the first season I'm watching every IndyCar race, and it's honestly been great. I highly recommend you do it,
Hmm.
even if you're not like, even if you're not like an American listener. It's still worth it. Like, it's still great racing. It's close. Um, yeah, I'm into it. I'm excited. I'm
Hmm.
excited. It's honestly it's a bit more exciting than Formula E right now.
Mm.
So if you're
Yeah.
watching
Wah
Formula E, it's
wah.
like cool and you should watch it, but IndyCar is a lot more exciting. I would actually say Formula Academy is more exciting than Formula E
Hmm.
at this moment right now. So yeah,
Shout out to our girl Abby Pulling.
that's right. Shout out to Abby. Yeah, she's killing it. I think she's going to get it this year. She's just dominating
Yeah.
everybody. I thought it was going to be Dorian Penn, but she
Yeah.
fell away. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, all right, everybody. Thanks for listening to F1 or F Off. You can find us anywhere you listen to your podcast. If you want to hit us up, if you want to talk to us, send us a message on Instagram. We're also on TikTok. We put up every episode up on YouTube, so you can see our glorious faces in weird mixed lighting.
Vogue.
Every time, yeah. Come on, vote. Um, that's right. We're also on X, which is what it is. You can also, and those are all at F1 or F off. You can also email us at F1 or F off podcast at gmail.com. Send us an email. Let us know what you think. Anything, if you have, questions or if you have comments, if you want to shout out, we will do that. And also, please give us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. Like and subscribe our YouTube channel. It genuinely helps us out. Lets us know you're listening. Lets us know that we're doing a good job. And share it with your family, share it to your friends, and share it to that one dude that always gives harsh critiques because we'll take it. And yeah, stay cool. It's getting a heat wave over by me right now, and I know that's just been happening in different pockets across America and across the world, frankly. So, um, don't shoot fireworks at your animals. Keep everyone inside on a hot day, and yeah, rant over.
All right. Thanks
All
all.
right,
Peace.
peace, everybody.